Hello and welcome to our webinar today entitled Nutrition for Injury Prevention with McGill Dietetic Intern Ronald Chang. Ronald will be explaining the basics of nutrition for injury prevention, which involves strategies for recovery after your training and general nutrition habits that have been shown to help decrease inflammation and promote health and performance. Ronald will also be preparing a recipe called an omega-3 super dish. This session is being recorded. Please add your questions in the chat, and we will have an unrecorded question and answer time at the end of the session. Thanks, Ronald, for preparing this session for us. We look forward to learning from you today.
Thank you, Tia, and thank you everyone for coming to my presentation on nutrition for injury prevention. So today we'll talk a bit about how sport injuries can be prevented by omega-3 and where you can really find omega-3 and what is omega-3 actually is. Then I will share with you a recipe on omega-3 and then some food preparation tips as well. And then after that, I will share with you also other nutritional strategies to prevent sport injury. And by the end of this presentation, I will test you on how much knowledge you obtain from my presentation. So I would like to start with a poll question. Have you ever suffered from a sports injury before? Yes or no? If you feel comfortable, you can answer that. But if you're not comfortable, you can just skip it. So it's actually fairly common for people to get injured in sports. So if you're an average active adult doing like recreational sports, then you have like 20% of getting at least one injury. And if we're talking about university level professionally trained athletes, then there's more than 90% of you that may get at least one injury in your career, in your university career, and averaging around 2.3 injuries. So it's actually not a surprise for athletes to get like a sport injury. So why are sport injury bad for us? So as you may know, if you get an injury, then it may take you a very long time to get fully recovered. That means you may miss some trainings and some competition during the recovery time. And even if you are recovered from the injury, it may affect your overall performance as well. And if we're talking about EMBA students, or sometimes we refer them as corporate athletes, sport injuries can really affect their physical capacity to handle their stressful work. So from a business point of view, it's not something that they may want to see because it really affects your performance at work. So it's always better safe than sorry. So you can prevent sport injuries really by nutrition. And here we're really talking about how omega-3 can play a role in sport injuries. So what is omega-3? So going back to biology 101, a fat molecule is composed of two components. The first one is a glycerol backbone, and the second component is 3 fatty acids. You may heard of saturated fatty acids, unsaturated fatty acids, or trans fatty acid. Those are all fatty acids. And omega-3 or omega-3 fatty acids is really a specific type of polyunsaturated fatty acid, or PUFA. And omega-3 is an important building blocks in our lipid metabolism. So you can find omega-3 like all around our body. And it's really a nutrient that is widely available in nature. We can find them in plants and fish. So it's not like a rare elements that we have to find it only from supplements. And if we eat properly, we can get our enough omega-3 from food. So how does omega-3 prevent sport injury? First, it's good for our health, our hearts and brain. So it really reduces the risk of blood clot and lowering our blood pressure. So this can prevent us from having cardiovascular diseases and strokes, especially when we're doing exercises when our blood pressure is a bit higher. And that way omega-3 can really bring the blood pressure down a bit. And omega-3 is also good for our muscle and joints as well. So omega-3 has an anti-inflammatory property. So when we're doing exercise, there is oxidative stress building up in our body, and omega-3 can really lessen those oxidative damage. So this can prevent chronic inflammation and speed up the speed for our body to recover from our exercises. So when our body is in a better condition, that means when we're doing exercise next time, it's less likely for us to get injured. So are the benefits of omega-3? So there are studies showing that omega-3 can increase the rates of muscle synthesis. So that means you have more strength and power when you're doing your training or exercises. And another research also showed that omega-3 can increase the flow of oxygen into our muscles during exercises. So that means you may have a little bit more endurance. And omega-3 does not really bring us benefits in terms of sports. It can also affect our mental health as well. So if you're someone who is suffering from depression, ADHD, or bipolar disorder, omega-3 can play a role in improving your condition. And also when we're talking about someone older in their life having Alzheimer's disease or mild cognitive disorders, omega-3 can delay the deterioration of those mental conditions. So a little bit more about omega-3. So there are 3 major types of omega-3 out there. The first one is ALA, the second one is EPA, and the third one is DHA. And ALA is an essential fatty acid. That means we cannot synthesize it from our body by ourselves, and we can only obtain this ALA from diet. And EPA and DHA, we can either obtain it from diet directly, or our body can convert it from ALA. But the conversion rate is quite low from ALA to EPA and DHA, so around 0 to 20%. So it's really important for us to get our EPA and DHA directly from diet because the conversion rate is a bit low. And depending on our physiology and metabolism, the conversion efficiency may be different from one individual to another individual. So where we can find ALA? ALA, we can find it really in plant foods. So for example, nuts, walnuts, and other seeds as well. So like hemp seed, chia seed, flax seeds, and some soybean products such as tofu, tempeh, and edamame. And we can also find it in those plant oils as well. So like walnut oil, flaxseed oil, soybean oil, and canola oil. And for EPA and DHA, we can find them in marine foods really. So for example, oily fish like salmon, mackerel, trout, sardine, and tuna, they are all rich in EPA and DHA. And we can also find it in other seafood as well, such as shrimps and mussel. And kelps and seaweed are also some marine food that is rich in EPA and DHA. And there are other special items or fortified items that is being fortified with omega-3 as well. So we can find fortified eggs, milk, and yogurt, margarine, and juice with omega-3 out there in the market. So how much omega-3 exactly we need in a day? So we need around 1.1 to 1.6 grams of ALA per day, and an average of 0.3 to 0.45 grams of EPA and DHA in combination a day. So we can achieve the EPA and DHA recommendation by eating at least 2 servings of fish per week. But if you are someone who is avoiding fish for any reason, you can replace the fish with other marine food or fortified foods listed like in previous slide. And unfortunately, there's no specific guideline for how much athlete really needs. So you may want to consult your dietitian for your own specific needs. Another poll question: is it possible for someone to meet his or her omega-3 needs if he or she does not eat fish? So the answer for this question is definitely a yes. And here I want to share with you a recipe that is rich in omega-3, but it does not contain any fish. And it's really easy and quick to make, so it's really handy for someone with a very busy schedule. But before that, I would like to share with you some tips for food preparation first. So first, you want to have good food safety. So the first thing you want to do is you want to always wash your hands thoroughly with soap before and after you prepare your food. And especially coming back from outside right now with this whole COVID-19 situation. So it's really important for you to consistently wash your hand properly. The second thing you may want to do is to avoid any cross-contamination, especially with raw food and cooked food. And one thing you could do is you can prepare different cutting boards and cooking wares for raw food separately and cooked food separately. So that way you won't mix them together. And the third thing you might want to do is you want to clean and sanitize your station and your cooking, counters properly and regularly. And Lysol wipes can really do the work for you. The second tip is, sometimes you may want to prepare a lot of meals and to save them in the fridge. So here are some tips for food storage. Usually the safe food are good for 3 to 4 days, and more than that you may want to discard them. And really, after you prepare those food and you store it, you want to place them on the top shelf. And something that you want to make sure when you store your food, you want to refrigerate your food between within the 2 hours after you cook them. So you want to kind of like refrigerate them in your fridge as soon as possible, and you want to make sure the temperature of your fridge is below 4 degrees Celsius. The third tip is about kitchen safety. So you might want to be mindful of, the first thing is, are you aware of the emergency exits of where you live? And if not, you may want to have kind of like a plan your escape routes in case of any emergency accidents happen. The second thing is you want to ensure that your fire extinguishers at your household is actually functional. So let's say like every month, you may want to ensure that the needle is within the green area. So that means the fire extinguisher is still usable. And the third thing you may want to do is you want to always have your first aid kit available and accessible. So if you do not already have one, you may want to stock one up in case you have like a cut or a bleed. So now let's get to the actual recipe. So for this recipe, you will need the following ingredients. So first, you will need 30 grams of soba noodles. Then you will need 1/3 cup of edamame and a medium carrot. Then you need 50 grams of firm tofu and 50 grams of defanged shrimps. Then you will need 3 teaspoons of low sodium soy sauce, 2 teaspoons of sesame oil, and 1 teaspoon of lime juice. Then you will also need half a green onion and 3 teaspoons of shredded seaweed. So now let's get cooking. First, you want to wash the carrot and the half of the green onion thoroughly. Then you also want to remove the excess water on the surface of the tofu by like a paper towel. Then you want to cut your carrots into matchstick size. Then you want to cut the tofu into cubes. Now you want to put 3 teaspoons of low sodium soy sauce, 2 teaspoons of sesame oil, and then lastly a teaspoon of lime juice into a bowl. Then give it a good mix. Then you want to dice the half of the green onion and then put the diced green onion into the sauce. And also give it a good mix. Then you want to bring a pot of water to boil, and in the boiling water you want to add the soba noodles and the edamame inside. Then you want to cook it for 2 minutes. Give it a little stir so that the noodles do not stick together. Then at 2 minutes, you want to add the shrimps inside and cook it for another 3 minutes. Also, to stir it to make sure the noodles are not sticking together. Then at 5 minutes, you want to remove the whole thing from heat. Drain away the hot water, and then rinse the content with cold water. And lastly, you want to set aside the content to let the soba noodle, the shrimp, and the edamame to cool down. And then in another frying pan, you want to add 1 teaspoon of vegetable oil and then bring it to medium-high heat. So when the pan is hot enough, you want to pan fry the tofu. You can use tongs if you don't use chopsticks. And you want to always pan fry it on one surface. Cook them for 1 to 2 minutes. At 1 to 2 minutes, you want to flip the tofu upside down and to fry the other side of the tofu, and then to cook it for another 1 to 2 minutes. When the surface is golden and crispy, you know it's the ideal texture, so you can transfer the cooked tofu into a bowl. Lastly, you just have to assemble everything together. So first, you want to bring the cool down noodles, the shrimps, and the edamame into the bowl. Then you want to place the cooked tofu inside, and then the carrots, and of course the sauce. Then you want to toss all the contents well. Make sure they are all completely mixed together and the sauce are covering the noodles and the tofu and the carrots completely. And lastly, you want to top it with 3 teaspoons of shredded seaweed. And if you want some extra heat, then you can also put some hot pepper flakes on your noodles. And here's how you make your omega-3 super dish. So a bit more about this dish. So if you're allergic to shellfish, to sesame, to soya, and to gluten, then you might want to avoid this recipe because this recipe really contains those allergens. And the total preparation time is between 15 to 30 minutes. So if you're someone with a very busy schedule, you can obviously manage this dish. And if you have time, you can do it in bulk as well and save it for more meals. And in total, this dish provides you 430 calories with 20 grams of protein and 8 grams of fiber. And here we want to look into omega-3 specifically. So the whole dish provides you 0.6 grams of omega-3 in total. And for ALA, there's 0.4 grams, and for EPA and DHA, there's 0.2 grams. So in total, it's already meeting around a third to half of the total requirement of ALA and EPA respectively for your daily needs. And the total cost for this dish is only around $4.53. So it's almost like half of the price you can get if you are buying the same dish from outside. So you're saving, like half of your money. So another poll question: which ingredients from the recipe is rich in omega-3? A, edamame, B, tofu, C, shrimp, D, seaweed, or E, all of above? So the answer for this question is obviously all of above. So seaweed, tofu, shrimps, and edamame, they are all rich in omega-3. So now I want to move on to other nutritional strategies to prevent sport injuries. And the first thing you can do is to have like a balanced plate. So according to the latest Canada's food guide, you may want to eat a variety of healthy foods, which is gonna be able to provide you with a complete profile of nutrients. So whenever you're preparing your lunch or your dinner, you want to aim at half of a plate of vegetables and fruits, and then a quadrant of proteins. So here's where you can get your meats, your fish, your lentils, your eggs, and all that. And then the last quadrant is for starches. So preferably you want to have something that's whole grain. So as I've mentioned above, you want to mimic the distribution of this plate whenever you're doing your food preparation, just like the recipe that I provide you with. So the half of plate is composed of edamame and carrot, which is the vegetables and fruits, and then a quadrant is the shrimps and the tofu, which is where you get your proteins, and this last quadrant is the soba noodles, which is where the starches are. So with the balanced plate, it can really provide you with a complete profile of nutrients. So you can get sugars from the starches, you can get your proteins, and also you can get a lot of minerals and vitamins from your vegetables and fruits. And those are really the key to help us to repair and reload muscles with the views that we use during our exercises. And with better recovery means we can prevent injuries during the next exercise. Another thing you want to do is you want to ensure you have enough carbs and proteins on a daily basis. So when we're doing exercise, our body is actually burning sugars and the muscles are actually breaking down. So we always want to reload the carbs and to have enough protein in order for our body to resynthesize the muscle we break down during our exercises. So studies really show that a combination of carbs and proteins before and after exercise can prevent sport injuries. So what you want to do is want to have some carbs 1 to 2 hours before you do your exercises, which is able to maintain a sufficient amount of fuels for your muscles during the exercise. So that way your muscle is going to prevent itself from being overstressed. So another thing you want to do is you want to have some proteins 3 or 4 hours before you do exercise, and immediately after you exercise, have some carbs and proteins as well. So this can really gives you a chance of having better recovery after exercises, which is again to reload and repair. So when your body will recover from the stress from your exercise, and whenever you're doing your next session, your next training, your body is in a better condition, so you're less likely to get injured. So you want to aim at around 45 to 55% of calories coming from carbs and 10% to 30% of calories coming from proteins on a daily basis. So the recommendation for proteins is 1 to 1.2 grams per kg weight of proteins per day. So if you're someone who is 60 kg for your weight, you may want to aim at 60 to 72 grams of proteins per day. But if you're someone who is doing more intensive exercises, then the amount of protein you need may increase. So there's also something you want to talk or to consult your dietitian on your own specific needs. And really, if you are doing exercise on a regular basis, you may always want to kind of remind yourself to allocate some amounts of carbs and proteins from your total daily needs to the combination of carbs and proteins immediately after the exercise. So this can really give you a better chance for you to recover and to repair your body, and to give your body a better chance to be less likely to get injured from your next training. So the last thing you want to do is you want to ensure that you have enough calcium and vitamin D in your diet. So as athletes, you are really prone to bone fractures. So it's really important for you to have strong bones off court and on courts. So the first thing you want to do is you want to have enough calcium, because calcium are really the building blocks of your bones. So the denser your bones mean you have stronger bones, means you're less likely to have any bone fractures. And vitamin D is another nutrient that is acting in our body to help us to absorb the calcium better in our guts. So it's important to have both calcium and vitamin D hand to hand. And sunlight can be a source of vitamin D, but unfortunately, we're living in the northern climate, which does not guarantee us to have enough sun exposure. So the sun exposure is only available from April to October, but more vitamin D or supplements may be needed for the rest of the year because we may not have enough sun exposure. So the recommendation for calcium and vitamin D is 1,000 milligrams of calcium per day and 600 IUs of vitamin D in a day. And you can get some calcium from dairy such as milk, cheese, and yogurt, and some leafy dark greens such as kale, broccoli, and spinach. And there are fortified items as well. So some oranges and cereals might be fortified with calcium. And for food sources for vitamin D, there's oily fish and eggs. So there's already naturally existent vitamin D in fish and eggs as well, especially the egg yolks. And there are also fortified items such as milk and margarines that's being added with vitamin D. So you can also get vitamin D from those food sources as well. So another poll question, which statement is true about sport injury prevention? The first one is, eating a balanced plate can provide with key nutrients for body to recover. The second one is, carbs and proteins are the keys to repair and restore muscles. The third one is, calcium and vitamin D are the keys for strong bones, or D, all of above. So the answer for this question is all of above. So it's important for you to have a balanced plate on a regular basis and to ensure yourself having enough carbs, proteins, calcium, and vitamin D like on a daily basis. So a quick summary of what we've talked about during my presentation today and what you may have learned from my presentation. So the first thing is you might know like how omega-3 can play a role in sport injuries prevention and what are the major types of omega-3 and where you can find them in food. And I've shared with you our omega-3 rich recipe and some pro tips on food preparation. And lastly, I hope you learned some other nutrition strategies to prevent sport injuries. And now I would like to test you on your knowledge, so to see like how much you can obtain from my presentation. So quiz time. The first one is, which fatty acid is a common type of omega-3 fatty acid? A, ALA, B, EPA, C, DHA, or D, all of above? So the answer for this question is D, all of above. So ALA is a kind of omega-3 that we cannot synthesize from our body, so we can only obtain it from food. And EPA and DHA, although we can synthesize it from ALA within our body, but the conversion rate is pretty low. So it's better for us to have EPA and DHA directly from food. The second question, which statement is true about omega-3 fatty acid? So A, ALAs is usually found in plant-based foods. B, EPA and DHA is usually found in marine foods. C, omega-3 can be found in fortified foods like eggs, milk, yogurts, margarine, and juice, or D, all of above. So the answer for this question is also all of above. So ALA is really from plant-based foods such as like walnuts, seeds, and soybean products, and EPA and DHA is really from marine food, so like seaweed, seafood like shrimps or mussels, or oily fish like salmon or like trout. So and omega-3 can also be found in fortified foods as well. So some specific items like eggs, milk or yogurt, margarine, juice, those are something that sometimes the food producer might add omega-3 inside the products. And the last question, which nutrition strategies can prevent sport injury? The first one, incorporating omega-3 in your diet. The second one, eating a balanced plate. The third one, adequate carbs and proteins. The fourth one, adequate calcium and vitamin D. And E, all of above. So the answer is also all of above. So it's really important for you to have enough omega-3 like from your diet, and always keeping in mind a balanced plate. So half a plate of vegetables, a quadrant of proteins, and a quadrant of starches. Better for you to have whole grains foods, and also enough carbs, proteins, calcium, and vitamin D from your food source on a daily basis as well. So if you want to know about how to eat better for your better performance during your exercises, I encourage you to check out this webinar, which is also posted on Perform Center blog website, and is about like what you can eat and how you can eat before and after your workout for better sport performances. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronald. So as Ronald mentioned, please join us for other webinars in the future and view our Perform blog page for previous Perform content. This concludes the recorded portion of the webinar, and we'll have some time now for questions. Thank you for participating.